G'day guys, welcome to the Australian Crypto Convention. Pav and I are down here in Sydney. We're recording interviews with exciting guests all weekend, so we're really keen to jump in and ask questions like, are we in a bull or bear market? Does Bitcoin go to 0 or $1 million from here? What else are we asking, Pav?
We're asking what's the bigger picture. I think a lot of people right now may be missing the forest for the trees, so we wanted to get some of the experts out there, their take on the market, what they're seeing behind the scenes, that really you have to come to these conventions to really talk to the kind of people that are, building the next generation of crypto products, right? So we're really excited to share some insights out of that.
Yeah, we're super buzzing. So, mate, let's get into it.
Let's crack in.
Alrighty guys, welcome back. We're here on day 2 at Oz CryptoCon. And, we started a little bit later today, as for obvious reasons. Pav, I think you...
You say obvious. What do you mean obvious?
Well, I mean, were you eating a Chinese dish at 3 a.m. last night?
It was succulent. It was nice.
Yeah, very good, very good. But we've got a familiar face on to kick us off on the Sunday. It's Mr. Joe Shew from CCI. Joe, welcome.
Thanks for having me in, boys. Good to see you both.
Yes, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. So, Joe, I think like the main sort of theme around sort of the content this weekend has definitely been around the market. Are we in a bear market? Are we just bottoming out? Like, I was watching some content of yours from you and the CCI guys, and you were referring to, fear and greed being at the lowest point since FTX levels.
Yep.
You're talking about outflows from ETFs being, consistent selling. So it's like, I want to get your take, because a lot of people are looking at it being bear market. Other people are on the fence and saying, no, we're just bottoming out and could hit another high. Like, what's your take on it, and how are you telling your community to play this, and what's the strategy you're employing?
Yeah, so I think one really important thing is that we don't get attached to naming it. It's not a bear, not a bull, it just is. And the more that we separate ourselves from a condition, then because if you say, oh, we're in the bear market or we're in this, and you try and attach that, then like we were talking before, your antenna starts tuning into that, and all the data you find is to confirm your bias.
Yeah.
So what I prefer to do is just always focus on the data. What are the outflows? Where are they coming from? ETFs, institutions, like the treasuries. What's going to happen with MicroStrategy as we get down to these levels? Then obviously the longer term holders, 155 days or more, they've sold over 1 million Bitcoin since June. So it's really determining, okay, the flow is coming out. So as a marker, 265% of the new Bitcoins being issued was outflowing. So if there's X amount, is it 900 or 450 at the minute, Bitcoins per day being mined?
I haven't been keeping abreast of it. It was 900 yesterday?
Yeah, so it's still 900.
Yeah.
So 265% of that is being sold through ETFs and institutions at the minute. At some peaks, we've seen 1,880% of the purchasing greater than what's being produced every day. So when you look at those metrics, it's like, okay, I understand there's an extremity of outflows, not only from the long-term holders, but also from institutional level.
Yeah.
And when you marry those two things together, it doesn't matter if we're at the peak fear. If you only bought off the fear and greed in the past, you would have done incredibly well. You would have sold the top, bought the bottom. But I just think my message for anyone that's watching is, don't attach to it's a bear, it's a bull. Watch the data, don't buy the dip, because we can dip further. 265%, you've seen 1,880 in inflows. We can still go way lower. And if there's the extremity of the MicroStrategies, who are one of the largest Bitcoin holders, if they have to start offloading to manage everything, that will be the signal to the rest of the market, and then we see a mass capitulation. And that's when we're like the 200-week moving average, or 200-day, whatever it is, down at 55K, is still within reason. So my core message to people is, don't buy the dip, or if you are looking for entry now, because 82K is the true median value of all Bitcoin in existence being purchased, that's a real good anchor, and it lines up to some other metrics as well at 82K on the nose. So if you are looking for entry there, set a tight stop loss. Don't just buy and like potentially get wicked out and be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to do that. It's like, if you want to take on risk, okay, but make sure you've got a strategy, because you can still capitulate another 30-40% from here, which seems unlikely, but so did 80K seem unlikely.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Because people would have laughed you out the door. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's because everyone was blinded by we're 150, 180. And I remember seeing an influencer post on that, and I said, don't look for price targets. You look for structure of market. If the structure breaks, if the key levels are lost, if the Fibonacci's maybe a hit, but a number of things, but more importantly, what's going on the on-chain, and what's going on in psychology, and what's going on in macro.
Yep.
And you tie all the pieces of the puzzle together, you get a clear image. Forecasting is the worst thing that you can do, because then other people are like, oh, that's my strategy too.
Absolutely. And look, what else do you think people are sort of missing the mark on now? I feel like altcoins are another category. Everyone's like they're on a fire sale. You know, it can't. You know, these are such bargains at these prices. Like, how do you kind of resolve that within your own group?
Show data.
Yeah.
Honestly, the best thing that we've done is Bitcoin pair charts.
Yep.
If it's not beating Bitcoin, don't buy it. That has literally been my motto for the last year.
Yep.
And that's it. And then to me, it's like if the price is going down against USDT, you hedge into USDT. If Pax Gold is outperforming USDT and Bitcoin, you hedge into Pax Gold. It's just a smart, logical thing. So my entire strategy is outperformance. If something's beaten something else, then you hedge some risk into that, and you take an allocation and you manage risk back into either BTC or USDT, and you have that set, and the market comes to you, and you have some target levels where you reduce risk. You're not like, oh, gold's going to 10k now, and have these unrealistic expectations, because when the drum starts beating louder and everyone's saying it's going to 10k, you know that we're getting to a local top.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened with
happened
Bitcoin.
again.
What about people who might not necessarily have the time to be, you know, looking at charts and trading day to day? Like people who have more of a long-term view of crypto. Like, how would you like play this market at the moment? Like, because you said before, like buying the dip can sometimes be a really poor strategy because it just dips lower and dips lower before you don't have any money to buy the dip anymore, right? So
Yeah.
what would you say to those people who are maybe a bit more time poor and more looking at this as a long-term investment?
The best strategy out there, which is proven in different markets over decades, dollar cost averaging.
There you go.
Set and forget, buy the same consistent amount. Make sure you use SwiftX. And either buy daily, or the best performing day this year, it was Monday. I ran all the data. What was the best performing or the lowest days to buy?
Yep.
Sunday's been the best performing day now.
Yep.
So if you bought Sunday morning every week, or you buy consistently every day for a small amount. I know James Check, obviously you like James's work.
Yeah.
His strategy is to dollar cost average every single day.
Yep.
And then as it gets over a certain level, you just turn it off.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just consistently buy. You don't have to check the market. Prices are relevant. Goes up, you stop over a certain point. Goes down, you constantly average a buy price down.
Yep.
And you don't have to watch the market. So it's just like, oh, I feel released. And then every month, 2 months, you take that money off, move it to your ledger. You manage your risk that way. And if you get to elevated levels and you got targets, you set an alert up on Trade and View. It comes through to your email. You have an agreement within yourself. Sell 20% at this point. You move money to the exchange. You dump 20% at that point, and then you turn on your dollar cost averaging. It is such a simple, low touch strategy. Manages risk. No time being consumed by it.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a fantastic approach.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We'll obviously keep things pretty short. We've got a lot of people coming on board. So, mate, as always, we really appreciate your insight. And, looking forward to sort of catching up tonight on the boat, and then in future as well. I'm sure we'll have you on the show again.
Absolutely. Thanks, boys.
Joe.
Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers. All right, guys, we've got our next guest here at the ACC. It's day 2. Mr. Leigh Travers, mate, welcome to the show. I don't think I've seen anyone's rap sheet as busy as yours. You know, director of Animoca Brands, chairman of Digital X. Mate, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you at the Australian Crypto Convention.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because we weren't sure what the mood was going to be like with the markets being down and, you know, not too much good news really coming out in recent times. But how have you sort of found the weekend chatting to people?
Well, I think it's just very, very different from the Twitter sphere. If you just spend all your time on Twitter and online, you probably would have to pack your bags in and go home with some losses. But just to sort of come out here and sort of meet with people that have the sort of same values and ideas as you do, and have that sort of long-term support in the market, just that human connection is just so real and so important. And I'm so glad that the event's been as popular as it has been.
Yeah, you're wearing the Digital X hat. Can you give us a little bit of background as to what Digital X does and what your role is there?
Yeah, Digital X is Australia's largest listed Bitcoin company. So the company's got 500 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, which we've been growing this year.
Nice.
As part of the new Bitcoin first and Bitcoin only strategy. We had Animoca Brands, who I work for as a director of capital markets, came in and invested in July alongside two of the most leading crypto investors in the world, being UTXO, who are early investors in Metaplanet, and other Bitcoin-focused companies, and Parify Digital, which is one of the most active investors in the space, come in and invest into Digital X to create this Bitcoin strategy. The company also operates a Bitcoin ETF, spot Bitcoin ETF, and has an online brokerage for selling of equities. So if you go online and Google, I want to sell my shares, then our platform, sellmyshares.com.au, that should be the first one that comes up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, nice.
And we've seen so much success in such a short amount of time, particularly in the US with the Bitcoin ETFs over there. We're starting to see the likes of Digital X and some other issuers offer Bitcoin ETFs and other crypto ETFs in Australia. Can you explain to us why these are gaining so much traction, why they're becoming so popular?
I think it's still the case that entering crypto, buying Bitcoin via an exchange is still foreign to a lot of people. They're used to spending their money via their broker when it comes to investments, whether that's CommSec or their full service brokerage. That's what they've known, and that's what they'll continue to do. But these ETFs effectively bring Bitcoin to Wall Street or the ASX in our case, and that's really changed the game for a lot of investors that want to have those same sort of guardrails. They want their broker to be ASIC regulated. They want the familiarity of a stock exchange that's only giving them the price from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday, not every day that we know crypto operates in. So
morning,
that's that familiarity, that security, that trust that they want.
Yep.
Bitcoin is presented in that fashion via a Bitcoin ETF, and the custodian process is very, very strong, very regulated. The execution as well, that's very thorough in terms of how that's managed, and it's a process that has a lot of oversight, has some additional costs, but something that many investors are very happy to pay for.
And it's interesting as well, like we've got Fong Leigh from Strategy here as well, CEO of Strategy. Do you guys been exchanging glances over the weekend? It's obviously like there's a good reason everyone's starting to look at the Aussie market, right? Like, could you tell us a little bit more about just the landscape here and how it's developing?
Yeah, well, MicroStrategy was the pioneer for adding Bitcoin to your treasury. Yeah. And we've met a lot of, smaller companies during the ACC that are adding Bitcoin to their own personal company's balance sheet. But they were the pioneer for public companies, and they've been able to make it happen for the Teslas of the world and the Figmas more recently, and all the digital asset treasuries globally. But certainly for Digital X, they've helped us sort of bring that to mainstream as well, helped us in terms of accessing more funding from investors that want to see the MicroStrategy of Australia on the ASX. Yep. I was actually on stage on the keynote this morning with Fong Leigh from MicroStrategy, and his view was that there'll be a MicroStrategy in all the global markets. As a localized opportunity. So certainly for those Digital X shareholders, that gives us a lot of confidence that we can grow this strategy out within the Digital X business to really accumulate Bitcoin, grow our Bitcoin per share, and effectively be a Bitcoin accumulator on the Australian Stock Exchange for Australian investors.
Yeah, nice. I'm really curious to know what the psychology and sort of the trading behaviour is, how because you've worked in the exchange space before, now you're obviously in the ETF space. Like, you mentioned the clientele's a bit different, it's a bit more sophisticated, they're more that 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but like, how does sort of the trading behaviour change? Because we've spoken before, like, we think the introduction of ETFs in the crypto space makes it a more mature market, but then there's also, the flip side where they're saying, well, these people, have clients that they need to, cater for, and so they're going to offload their Bitcoin quicker, and that could actually, send the Bitcoin price down quicker. So it's like you could look at it from both sides, but I'm just curious to know from as an insider what the trading behavior is and how it's different from, say, like when you worked in the exchange space.
I would say a lot of the operators within the exchange space, in terms of those customers you have, particularly that are trading the more complex products, they're extremely sophisticated. As experienced, as sophisticated as any TradFi operator. What this effectively does operate and offer is the ability for mums and dads to come in and buy the product. So maybe they have less understanding and education specifically on Bitcoin and crypto. So they're not necessarily looking at the 4-year cycle as something as closely as someone in the industry would. They're certainly not looking at the same influences we're looking at on Twitter for their trading advice. So I would say it's much more of a sort of a buy and hold demographic that enters the ETF, rather than on exchanges you're seeing really active traders. You're seeing teams of traders that'll operate under one account. Much more sophisticated trading strategies exist on exchange than they do that are entering the Bitcoin ETF. So I think the buy and hold mentality should hopefully bring a little bit more stability towards pricing. However, in the last sort of month or so, where we've seen a bit of an exodus of Bitcoin ETFs, particularly out of the US, watch out for the open and the close. That's where I think around 50% of all volumes for equities take place, the open and the close, rather than intraday. So those sort of periods around openings and closing will have a little bit of extra volatility compared to the rest of the hours of the day.
And is there any appetite to go beyond Bitcoin when it comes to ETFs? Like we've seen ETH ETFs in the US, we've seen Solana launch. I think that's only going to continue in the future, but is there any appetite from a Digital X perspective to offer altcoin ETFs?
For Digital X, that won't be for us. We're Bitcoin focused in terms of the ETF landscape and certainly our treasury. But from an ASX point of view, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see an ETH ETF or a Sol ETF. And I think the only thing that you probably need is there enough scale in the Australian investor base to warrant those products? Or is there a group that's got a big enough balance sheet that's happy to wait out the time for those products to sort of gain that mainstream traction? There's also some complexities, right, with exchanges, staking opportunities, direct by holding the asset. There's some benefits rather than holding a spot Solana or spot ETH ETF. I'd rather hold the underlying because you can do things with it. Whereas Bitcoin has, I guess, none of those staking capabilities. So it's more attractive as an ETF product compared to the altcoins as I described.
Yeah, we've seen a bit of a trend lately, specifically this convention. Everyone's starting to bring up the idea of quantum computing. How's it going to impact the Bitcoin network? Have you guys been having conversations about, what that means for Digital X, and just personally how you feel about the whole risk of quantum computing and the Bitcoin network being at risk?
Yeah, I think with the way that I see quantum computing is that Bitcoin wallets that have already been used and have expenses that are old, they're the ones that are most at risk. If the wallets have been updated in line with sort of the current standards, then obviously I think they'll be fine for the time being. And from a pricing risk, I think it's more of a short-term blip. I think things can be upgraded as well to be quantum proof. I'm not seeing it necessarily as a short-term risk or medium-term risk for Bitcoin specifically, but it's not also my area of expertise. So happy to watch, wait, and maybe make some investments.
Yeah, it's one of those things like we had the CTO of Ledger on, and he was saying, well, the banks are probably more at risk than your Bitcoin wallet, more than likely. So I think there's a lot more other stuff we should probably be worried about breaking.
Anything interesting happening with the Animoca stuff? Obviously, your focus here is the Digital X, given the hat, but any exciting developments happening over there?
Animoca's at an incredibly exciting inflection point. It was previously, what still is, an Australian public company, and it was listed on the ASX. Left the ASX around 2020 with the exodus of a number of other crypto companies as the ASX clamped down on the sector. But has since gone on to have some tremendous success, both as an investment company and as an operator, and has announced plans to be listing on the Nasdaq next year.
Oh, wow.
So that's still subject to a number of conditions. However, I think it's something that looks tremendously exciting to be able to get that investor base in the US familiar with Animoca, which has predominantly had sort of an Australian and Asian focus.
Yeah.
The company's had tremendous success across GameFi, the metaverse, and has been expanding the business now into stablecoins, real-world assets. So it's truly a diversified company across the entire sort of blockchain space, both as an investor and an operator. And I think that US listing is probably another step forward for the business in terms of what's become.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners, like, they are sort of pretty diversely orientated. Like, they do sort of subscribe to the whole metaverse idea, the gaming sort of thesis that that's an area for disruption. Can you sort of give listeners some sort of insights? Like, is there still developments in those spaces, even though the market may not be pricing, is it speculating there at the moment? Is there still things being built in the background?
There's certainly a lot being built in GameFi, in gaming, in NFTs.
Yeah.
The challenge has been that there's been a number of false starts.
Yeah.
We originally thought once the AAA game hits the market, that'll be the next light for GameFi. And we had Off the Grid hit the market, which is a great game, but not necessarily great for the token. We've had the rise of sort of play to earn, which saw economies falter out over time. So we're probably looking at what the next innovation is to sort of change the valuation landscape for GameFi, which has been really a bit of a wasteland for investors for the last year or two.
Yep.
So I'm confident that will change as investors and users of the internet want to own the assets in which they're utilizing, right?
Yeah.
They want to have a share of the revenues they create. They see that ownership economy as well, that creator economy. So it's really a matter of time and a when, not an if statement in my opinion. But I think we just need to stay the course for now. I'm not going to give you the next catalyst because my last two predictions haven't been exactly right, but I'm confident we'll come through. No,
it's definitely just like something we've spoken on the show. Like, obviously there needs to be confidence in the market. Things like ETH and Solana at all-time highs. Like, it always helps the sentiment, right? But it's always like one of those things you want to think about. If no one's looking at this sector, it's probably a good time to be looking. You could have said the same thing about NFTs a few months ago. Like, they really did perform quite well. Everything's kind of down right now, but I don't know, it's just interesting. I think we kind of forget about these other sectors and everyone gets a bit fixated on meme coins and everything else right now.
I think you make a good point about taking that contrarian view.
Yeah.
The contrarian view when Bitcoin was 125 at all-time highs would have been to sell it, and you would have been, I guess, in the right? It's a case that in crypto the narratives trend very hot, and everyone wants to be buying the hot narrative. So just have to be careful, I think, when buying when everyone else is. And to your point, being a contrarian can often be the best strategy in crypto.
Well, Leigh, you're obviously a very busy man, so we'll let you get back to the convention. We know also you're coming off the flu as well, so we want to let you rest up as well.
Thanks for that.
So I don't think we'll be seeing you on the boat tonight, but hopefully we'll see you again soon. So much appreciated.
Thanks very much.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
Alright guys, we're back with a very familiar face, Ben Simpson, founder and CEO of Collective Shift. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, fellas. I know everyone's a bit hungover today, but it's good.
Absolutely, yeah, you're preaching to the choir. Mate, this is probably your 30th time appearing on this show.
I was going to say, it must be in the 3 digits soon.
Definitely double digits.
Absolutely, you're definitely our biggest regular.
Yeah.
So, mate, thank you. We appreciate your time and all the value you provide us. So, mate, what's been happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, short-term pain, I think. That's where the moral of the story has been this conference. I think the mid-cycle correction, bear market, whatever you want to call it, has certainly impacted a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of pain being felt. I think, we're speaking just before we started, one of our analysts, Checkmate, who spoke today, he's speaking around bear market. The word bear market's so scary for a lot of people. I think the terminology and definition of a bear market is really important. Because, for the people that have been in the crypto for a little while, you think bear market and you go, oh shit, like a 2-3 year winter, crypto winter. We definitely don't think that's the case. We think we're in for a multi-month bear market, short-term correction, whatever you want to call it. because there's just not a lot of crypto catalysts right now. There really isn't. Things we've been waiting on the macro are not happening either, so it's kind of a bit of pain.
Everyone's got hands in pockets, it feels, right?
Yeah.
But it's still weird, like at the convention, like even speaking to people the last 2 days, everyone's pretty chipper. Like there's a lot of people that are obviously not happy with what's happened. They're like, oh, I should have sold more. Like, but that's always the case, right? But I was definitely expecting a lot more people to be like disheveled and not too interested, but seeing lots of engagement at the conference. Like, I don't know, are you kind of seeing the same things? Or?
Yeah, I am. So I did my keynote yesterday, and it was the biggest I've ever spoken in front of. It was crazy. I had 1,000 people.
Yeah, I think I saw the picture. It was just packed.
It was insane. And the thing I tried to bring my talk back to was like remembering why we're here. Because I think in a raging bull market, everyone can get a little bit lost in the euphoria of altcoins and, you know, making a lot of money really fast. And when you have the corrections and pullbacks, it kind of resets things. And for me, coming back to like why we're here and Bitcoin is the reason. And if you zoom out far enough, I know it's cliche, but like, you know, it's done extremely well. And a correction like this is very normal in crypto. And there's been a big unwinding, I think. We probably didn't put enough emphasis on the October 10th liquidation event. We're 6 weeks after that, and I think there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that are very fragile that, you know, whether or not you believe that whole market maker stuff sort of selling off, like there's seemingly a heavy amount of sell pressure that's going on. Like I think something, you know, definitely is a bit shaky behind the scenes.
That definitely seems to be even just a buzz amongst, like, I know we've talked about it on the show, like even just guests like chatting on the weekend, everyone's just waiting for a corpse to float to the top of the surface, but no, nothing seems to be breaking. But yeah, it's definitely interesting that we're seeing just that sell.
Yeah. And I think even if it was a market maker that wasn't like public, like they're just, you know, forcing a lot of sell pressure, we may not see that, you know, but back in 2021 or 2020, whenever the FTX collapse happened, it was about 8 weeks that we saw the pain, you know, really, you know, dry up at the end of that. And we're about 6.5 weeks into this.
Yeah.
When we have these big liquidation events, you know, it usually takes a couple of months to clean up. So we're on the tail end, but yeah, it's definitely been a little bit painful, you know, for investors.
Yeah. You're basically a celebrity here. You said you spoke to a 1,000-person audience, and, you know, coming here, you said you needed basically an escort because you're getting swarmed by people asking questions. What's been the most consistent question you've got all weekend?
That's a great question. I think it's like, you know, are we, you know, is it too late to sell, and should we be buying here? That's kind of like the two questions, because I think reality is all-time highs was like 47 days ago. Like that is wild.
Yeah, the way the sentiment's flipped. Yeah.
It has flipped so bearish so quickly. Yeah. And I think everyone got caught off guard, and now people are going, well, should I sell now or should I wait? When's the bottom going to be in? I think, you know, we sold, you know, a fair few of our altcoin positions and trimmed them about a week ago. Bitcoin was around 95K, and I think if you hadn't sold yet and you're at this position, I'd probably be now holding the line. I think we're far closer to the bottom than the top. I think, you know, the question of like, should we be buying here? If you're new to crypto, man, Bitcoin at 85, it's the same asset at 120.
Yeah, the fundamentals haven't changed, right?
100%, yeah. On the altcoin side, I'd probably just be far more selective on what you're investing in, because there's really no liquidity. Interest rates may or may not be being cut in December. You know, altcoins are a risk-on environment, which we're not in. So, yeah, I think just people have to be a little bit more selective on their portfolio.
Yeah, and you mentioned you trimmed your portfolio a little bit. I saw you put out some content around how you trimmed a lot of your altcoins, but you bought more Bitcoin.
Yes.
Can you explain like what specifically you sold out of your altcoins, and then like what's the decision to buy Bitcoin? Like you pretty much just said it there, but
yeah, I sold pretty much the 4 altcoins I trimmed, and I got rid of Sui. Took a little bit of a loss on Sui. Unfortunately, I just saw you know, Sui, especially right now, you know, amongst the other layer ones that I have, just really not being able to compete at a level amongst Solana and Ethereum for the time being. I thought, you know, Sui is a great play for the gaming sector. I still think it's a great project. I just think right now it's tough conditions, and I wanted to rotate that into the Bitcoin in the short term. I may add it back in the portfolio down the line, but for right now, you know, I wanted to, you know, this was a year ago. I diversified out of my Ethereum position. I had about 40% of my portfolio in ETH, and I saw this big wave of layer ones. So I distributed into Hyperliquid, you know, Solana, that's done really well for me. Sui didn't, but the 3 out of 4 have done well. And that's kind of, as an investor in crypto, I kind of take that as a win. But yeah, Bitcoin is a separate asset class. I think that's one common thing that newcomers into crypto don't understand. Like I see Bitcoin as it's a different asset class. Like Bitcoin is the reason we're here. It's the asset that I want to accumulate as much as I can of. The only reason I buy altcoins is to buy more Bitcoin. That's the only reason. I'm not emotional about the altcoins. I just want to buy anything that's going to outperform.
What's just the general sentiment around your community, not just at this event, but just, you obviously have a large community, a collective shift. Like, is everyone super scared right now? Do they see this as an opportunity? And then what are you trying to coach them through?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we had our client conference on Thursday, 2 or 3 days ago. Had 160 of our high net worths come in, full conference day, and it was the biggest we've ever had for a member event. And it's definitely mixed. I think the people that have been through multiple cycles before are like, it's kind of like another day in paradise.
Yeah.
For those that joined like 3 months ago, that are brand new to crypto, it's a lot to be, come in and just be straight down only for
Baptism by fire.
100%.
Yeah.
In saying that though, like we've seen a big still influx of brand new investors into crypto that have wealth outside of crypto in the stock market looking to come into Bitcoin.
Yeah, wow.
So we're still like seeing new investors come into the space even while the market's down, because I don't actually see that as a bad thing.
Yeah.
The sophisticated investors see it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's those that have over allocated. It's those that are, probably invested too much money that they couldn't afford to lose, that are now down, that are feeling the pain the most.
Yep.
The ones that can see the market correction as an opportunity, they're the ones that are really winning, I think.
So it's a pleasure as always, and like it's just nice to get like yourself and everyone else coming through, giving everyone a bit of a sanity check. Like, even just hearing from Joe today and the likes. Like it's just been good. Like people that have been in the space for a while, been through a lot. It's kind of the time where you'd sort of turn to people like that. So it's been good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, we'll give your time back to you. So
Appreciate
you
it. See you on the boat.
Yeah, appreciate it.